Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Um, Thank you for coming back to what is our last class for this course. I hope that you've been finding the content helpful and the readings and quizzes and homeworks helpful for your practice, for your understanding of um, what I consider is the perfect path. Uh, Everything fits together so perfectly on this path. Um, so just take a moment now and think about your motivation for being here today, now. Make it as clear and as heartfelt and as big as you can. So, does anyone have any questions um, from last class, where we started talking about the third path, right? Yang Dakbe Dawa, correct view. Perfect understanding. It's amazing. Okay, so then we'll go on. So today we are going to cover pretty much the last three verses of Jason Kappa's Three Principal Paths. And we're still on the idea of correct view. So I'll just read this first half of this verse for you, and then I'll ask you to repeat it. Nangwa tendrel lum wa me padang, tongpa kelen drelwe gowani. Say Nangwa. You can say it even though no one hears you, and that's okay. You hear you. Nangwa. Tendrel. Lua. Mepa. I want to see those lips moving. Tang. Tongpa. Kelen. Drelwe. Goa. Ni. So Nangwa, as it's used in this verse, it means appears or appearance. But here it's referring to Kunsop Dempa. And if you remember from last class, Kunsop Dempa was the first of the two realities we were talking about. Deceptive reality. The reality that deceives us. So here, Nangwa, appearance, is a code word for deceptive reality. How many things in the room in which you sit have deceptive reality? If you are who I think you are, everything, right? And then how about the emptinesses in this room? How many objects in your room have emptiness? Everything, yes. Endrel, we talked about this last time as well, is dependent origination or dependent arising. The fact that things depend on other things. Things are related, share a dependent relationship with other things. And we talked last time about how the different philosophical schools in Buddhism have different ideas about just what that dependent arising is, right? The functionalist group, the detailists, the sutrists, and the mind-only school, they believe that things that do things, things that function, are real. And so for them, the dependent relationship is one of a thing and its causes. That's what dependent arising means for them. And then for the independent branch of the middle way school, they said, wait, you're not including everything. If you're talking about things depending on causes, then you've left out things that don't depend on causes. You've left out unchanging things. Things like space. Things like cessation. Do you know this word cessation? It just means the state of having stopped. You've left out emptiness. Emptiness doesn't change, doesn't depend on causes. So they say, let's broaden it. Dependence means depends on parts, because everything has parts. Even space has parts. And then the consequence branch of the middle way school says, no, you've still left something out. You've left out that a thing is not a thing until we label it with a name and a mental image. that labeling process is what makes a thing a thing. It's what makes this cylinder a pen. So for them, dependent arising uh, is the ripening of a karmic seed into name, and what we call it a name and a mental image or a mental picture of this thing. Lua Mepa. Lua Mepa means never fails. Never fails. Lua is a word that means like a trick or a deception. And Mepa is doesn't have, right? So together, this means never fails, never fails. So what this is saying so far is that the appearances around us, that which appears to us, deceptive reality, they are dependent arisings which never fail. Another way you can interpret the appearance of dependent arisings is as karma. Karma never fails. And this is especially from the consequence branch presentation of how it is that things work. Because of that last idea they present, that the dependent arisings, what they're dependent on is the ripening of karma into what we call a thing and our mental image of it. And never fails, Lengnepa. We had that a few classes ago in the laws of karma, that karma is definite. And karma was movement of the mind and what it brings. So basically, thinking, speaking, and acting. And it all originates from the movement of the mind or thinking. And that it's definite means that there will be a result from thinking, speaking, or acting that will be similar to the cause. So there's two parts. There will be a result, and that result will be similar to the cause. So, Lawan Tendralua Mepa. This is our first thought that karma never fails. What we see around us, the appearance of things around us, whether they are painful or pleasant, comes from our past actions. It never fails. Never fails. The second idea, Tongpa Kelen Drowe go on me. So Tongpa, I'll go down here, it's easier. Tongpa, that means, does anybody know? Tongpa? It means emptiness. Yes, thank you. Shunyata in Sanskrit. Oh, this just means tongue, just means and, so it's tying two ideas together. The first idea about karma never fails, and then the second idea is going to be something about emptiness. Tongpa. Now, what about emptiness? Kelen Drowe. This means beyond any position. Emptiness beyond any position. So let's just describe this rather than me trying to give some sort of definition. Last time we talked about dak, self nature, that everything has, we go around the world thinking that everything has a self nature. So if we ask the question, does the self exist? We have to be careful about how we answer that question. If we say, no, this self doesn't exist. I was listening in class. There's no self. There's selflessness. If we say the self doesn't exist, well, then who is speaking right now? Who's translating for you? Whose picture is appearing on your Zoom screen? But if you say the self exists, you're also in trouble because of dependent arising, the idea of dependent arising, that everything has a dependent relationship with something else. So we can't hold on to self as truly existing, and we can't hold on to self as not existing at all. So when we say Kelen Drowe, that emptiness is beyond any position, this is what we're referring to. There's a verse in your reading that is really beautiful. And this it's not a verse of the three principal paths. I actually think it comes from Arya Nagarjuna, but maybe not. Maybe it's Jason Kappa. But anyway, it is of the consequence branch of the middle way position exclusively. Nothing exists naturally, but that's not to say that nothing exists at all. Everything exists merely by convention. But that's not to say that everything exists naturally. I'll stick it in the chat. So here we have two exists, right? At the beginning, in the first relationship, there is an exist, and in the second relationship, there is an exist. And then there's two not exists. Usually, when the lower philosophical schools, when they talk about self-nature and emptiness, they put it the opposite way. They present it as things things exist by convention, and that proves that it's not the case that nothing exists at all. So that appearance proves that there's no that it's not true that nothing exists. Does that make sense? Double negative there. So a little tricky. There's the two sides of the cliff. The middle way is is walking that razor's edge between the two sides of the cliff. One side is that everything exists truly, and the other side is that nothing exists at all. Those are the two wrong ideas. And we're talking about the Yang Dakbetawa, the correct view, which is the middle way between these two extremes. So usually, philosophical schools say that appearances, that things appear to us, that there are arisings, doesn't have to be visual. Could be sounds, could be tastes, could be physical sensations, could be thoughts, that things arise to us proves that things exist. Who was it? Some Western philosopher said, I think, therefore I am. Was that Descartes? I can't remember. Doesn't matter. Western philosophy. But it's that idea. And then, oh, good. Thank you, Laura. It was Descartes. And then the other side, emptiness, the lack of a self nature to things, let's put it that way, the absence of being, of things having some nature from their own side, proves that nothing has a nature from its own side. So you don't fall into the nihilist trap or the truly existent trap. But the consequence branch flips it around and says, no, no, it's cooler than that. That everything is a dependent arising. That proves that you can't say that nothing exists. And that everything exists by convention proves that there's proves that things exist, but not from their own side. So Tongpa Kelen Droe. So that's the second idea. Our first idea, karma, or we could say dependent arisings, never fail. And then our second idea is about emptiness. Emptiness beyond any position. Those two ideas. And that's actually what Koani means. These two ideas, or these two understandings. Koa, understanding, and ni, two. So we're talking about these two ideas. What are we talking about these two ideas? What are we saying about these two ideas? What does Jason Kappa say? He says, Jisi sosor nangwa desi du tadung tu pe gongpa tokpa me. Say, GC. I'm watching for those lips moving. GC. Sosor. Nangwa. Desidu. That was fun to say. Let's say it again. Desidu. Tadung. Tupe. Gongpa. Tokpa. Me. So, GC. GC means as long as. So while something is going on. Sosor here means unconnected. Literally, it means individually. And Nangwa again means pure. And Desidu is just a Tibetan grammatical rule where when you say GC, as long as, then you have to end with Desidu for that long. As long as X, for that long, Y. So In English, we don't use it. I'm not sure if any of your languages you have to use a convention like that. So, okay, as long as something is appearing unconnected, what's your guess about what we're talking about? Especially given the previous line of the verse, those two ideas, right? As long as the two ideas of karma being infallible and emptiness beyond any position, as long as these two ideas appear unconnected, appear individually. Okay, for that long, something else is going to be going on. Tadung, that means still, still. Tukpa, that's referring to Buddhas. Gongpa, those of you who are mixed nuts, those of you who get the, yes, very good, true intent. We're familiar with this, right? Geshe Michael is working on translating one of Jason Kappa's masterpieces. He has so many of them, but he's translating a book called Gompa Ramsal, which is illumination of the true thought. So it's the true intent. So the Buddha's true intent. Tukpe Gongpa. Tokpa, do you remember? We've had this one a few times in this course. Realizations. Yes. And its synonym was path, right? The three principal paths really means the three principal realizations that we need in order to reach complete and total enlightenment. Me. Me. It's the negative. So, altogether, for as long as those two ideas, karma never fails, and emptiness beyond any position, as long as those two ideas appear separately, appear disconnected, we don't have a realization of the Buddha's true intent. As long as that is going on, we don't understand the Buddha's intent. Whoa, it's so powerful. So powerful. I don't know about you, but that like just raised the hairs on the back of my neck. As long as when we're thinking about how things depend on other things, and we lose the idea of emptiness, we lose the idea of a lack of a self nature, Or as long as we're thinking about that things don't have a self nature and we forget about karma, we forget about morality, we still don't understand what the Buddha meant. And this also comes from Jason Kappa in another book, but it's not, it's that because things are empty, we must practice morality. Those two are uh, inexorably linked. That dependent arisings, that we have appearances, that these appearances never fail. If we harm someone, if we cheat someone, if we lie to someone, the appearance of being lied to, being cheated, being harmed will come. It does not fail. We must practice morality because everything is coming from us. Unless we're sadistic or something. But really, could we ever harm ourselves independently of bringing harm to others? Like even people who do harm themselves bring some, others don't like that. We don't like to see other people harming themselves, right? So, okay, we've got these two ideas. How do we use these two ideas in our day-to-day life? Um, does does keeping emptiness in mind uh, while things are appearing to us, like how would our world be different? So when we're let's just use an example of um, what's some example? Let's use driving in a lot of traffic. I was in Ho Chi Minh City recently and there was a lot of traffic. Very unlike the desert. Okay, anyway, so you're in traffic and everyone wants to get to where they're going faster than everybody else. wants to get to where they're going. And so there's all this movement jostling for position. And that can be upsetting, especially if you really want to get to somewhere soon. So when we notice that there's some sort of disruption in our mind, something that we're not happy about, we don't have to be, totally angry. But if we have this disturbance, we feel this disturbance about to rise, I'm gonna be late. All this traffic. We feel that's a feeling, right? Even before the thought comes up, there's this feeling. The first moment we notice this feeling, remember, traffic is a blank screen. Traffic has no self-nature. So that's the first thought. Second thought, what is traffic? It's just a perception. So first thought, blank screen. And even just saying, oh, blank screen, that can help calm that feeling of being agitated, right? So we think, blank screen, it is a projection. And then the third is recalling that I'm forced to experience this projection due to the ripening of karmic seeds that I planted previously. I'm forced. Like in this moment, no choice. I cut someone off in the past with my car. I'm forced to experience this the same way. Then, fourth, we bring up wisdom. Blank screen, projection, forced on me by my past actions. Just the thought, I must be wise about what I do next. I must use the wisdom of understanding how things work, why I experience what I experience. I must use that wisdom with what I do next. And so fifth is to act with wisdom, which basically means be moral, be ethical, be kind. What's the best thing you can do? Allow this motorcycle to go right in front of you with plenty of space so they don't feel nervous. At that moment, will traffic magically turn into smooth flowing vehicles, all going the same speed and not cutting in front of each other anymore? What do you think? No, we've planted a lot of seeds for traffic jams and dangerous driving. We've planted a lot of those seeds. So we have to think about, okay, I've to not get upset like, oh, it didn't work. Well, we need to purify that karma. And the best way to purify is there are 4 steps to it, and we're not going to get into the 4 steps, but the most powerful thing that we can do is to understand what's going on. These first 4 steps, right? Blank screen, projection, forced by karma, wisdom. Act with wisdom. Understanding those 5 and then acting, being moral, being ethical, being kind to others. Knowing that by being kind to others, we create a world where everyone is kind to each other. Not just that I'm going to have nice people around me, but everyone will experience kindness from others. That's a good way to purify with those kind of thoughts. So we'll go on now to the next verse. Namshik renjok me parchik chardu tendrel ni lur tongwa tsangni ne ngeshe yulgi zintang kunjik na detse dawe chipa zopala. So namshik means at some point, at some time, at some point. Renjok, for those of you studying the Tibetan language, because there's this open vowel sound in re, and the word following it starts with this ow, which is it's like an indicator that we need to use a heavy pre-nasal. So what is 2 words re, njok, turns into renjok. Renjok. Renjok means unrelated. So it's similar to what we had above, right? The sosor, what was it, Tongwa? It was sosor nangwa. Sosor nangwa, appear disconnected. So here we've got renjok, unrelated, mepa, not Not unrelated. You should be figuring out what's coming next. At some point, not unrelated. That sounds very hopeful. Chikchardu, at once. At once. Dendro, dependent arising. Milur, this is another way of saying what we said above as lur me, I think. But milur means never fails, doesn't fail. Tongwa means to see. Samnine, just by, just through. Geshe, this is uses the same word that we had above with lengepa, with karma being definite. Geshe means certainty. Certainty. Yul is object. Jintang means the way something is held. The way something is held. Kunchikna. That means it dissolves. It goes away. It dissolves. So what does this mean? These first three lines here. The moment we think, the moment that we think, oh, blank screen. And then we immediately think, oh, projection, forced on me by past karma. The moment we think, oh, things are forced on me by what I did in the past. Things are karmic ripenings. We think, because they don't have a self nature. The moment that we tie those two together, whenever we think of one, we think of the other. Whenever we think of the other, we think of the one. Whenever we walking around in our daily life, tie together our appearances with emptiness, with the absence of a self nature, with an absence of it not coming from me. So when that happens, that's what we're talking about. From that moment, when we tie these two together. Whenever we think about dependent arisings, we think about the lack of that thing coming from its own side. Whenever we think about emptiness, we think about dependent arising. We think about acting morally, ethically. These are two ideas, right? But these two ideas are two sides of the same coin. We can't have one without the other. The way things work, this coin with these two sides, understanding these two sides are linked, are connected. Then we've got the key to get out of this wheel of suffering. Anyway, I gave the punchline. I wasn't supposed to do that. Those two are inexorably linked. Let's let Jason Kappa give us the punchline. The punchline is Detse at that time, at that moment, Tawa, I'll go down here. Tawa, that's view, right? We're talking about Young Dakbe Tawa, correct view. So this is view. And Chepa, I don't think we've had, but this means to examine, to analyze. Sokbala, it is totally complete. Lak means it is, and Zokba, totally complete. At that moment, when whichever of the two thoughts arise in your mind, whether it's thinking about emptiness or thinking about karma or appearances, the moment that when you have one of those two thoughts, you think about the other immediately, at that time, your analysis of the view is totally complete. You understand the view. And then Jason Kappa's last verse, which you'll see in the reading, is that basically he says, get your butt to the meditation cushion and meditate. Meditate on this. You have correct view. So so we were just talking about the relationship between emptiness and dependent arisings, right?
很快要飞升成仙了，我能搞定很多这个仙家搞的事情，对吧？
他内心，你看他那样子写，他内心还是在挂念这些事情的。
I'm hearing foreign languages.
他在刘导那儿，在红运会那儿。
I think, okay, good. So, which is lovely to hear. Someday I would love to understand all these different languages. There's, along with that relationship, the relationship between appearances and emptiness, there's also a similar relationship between negative emotions and wisdom. But it's the opposite relationship, where appearances and emptiness are two sides of the same coin. Negative emotions and wisdom are mutually exclusive. We can't have wisdom if we're feeling upset. Any time we have a negative emotion, no matter how small or how big, and we talked about, for example, the 8 worldly dharmas, being happy when we get something and unhappy when we don't get something we want, feeling happy about feeling good or feeling unhappy about not feeling good, feeling happy when we're famous, we see our name in print or over the loudspeaker, and feeling sad when people say, Utpala who? Never heard of her. Feeling happy when we're praised and unhappy when we're scolded. Those 8 thoughts, those emotions are they're tied to this idea of having a doc, having a self. All our negative emotions are always aimed at a self, and not a self that, not the self that does exist, but at the self that doesn't exist. At the me that could exist from its own side. At the me that has some self nature. We can't have a negative emotion if we're not holding to a truly existent me. And we hold on to, we had that word Geshe, a certainty. We hold on to this this me with such certainty, I'm being harmed. They're talking about me. So whenever we have negative emotions, we are acting with incorrect worldview. And it's not just about right or wrong. It's about we're acting out of a worldview that doesn't work. We're reacting in ways that are only going to cause continued future suffering. When we have wisdom, when the moment we feel some agitation start to rise, and the more we look for this, the more familiar we become with, I don't know how to say this, but how we are in the world, what our normal reactions are. We can start to see, we start to catch thoughts before they arise. We start to be able to notice, what happens the moment before I start feeling upset? There is something that happens. And so the more we pay attention, the earlier we can catch it. So the earliest we can catch ourselves about to have a negative emotion and go through those 5. Use wisdom, basically. Then in that moment, we become more peaceful. In that moment, we're dissolving how firmly we're grasping to this self. We're loosening that. And as we go through the 5, we're also planting seeds for the future experience we want to have. So those 5 again, blank screen. So the moment we start to feel agitated, we just remember blank screen. Whatever the thing is that we're getting agitated about, for me, because most of my life is spent interacting with this computer, for me, most of the time, it's when my computer is not doing what I told it to do, or it's crashing or something. So for me, it's that thing. So I have to remember, computer, blank screen. Computer doesn't have its own nature. 2, I'm being forced. It's a projection of my mind. That's the second one. First one, blank screen. Second one, projection. It's a projection. It's an appearance. That's 3, forced on me by the ripening of karmic seeds that I planted long ago. 4, wisdom. Tie the 2 together automatically, right? Getting to where we tie them automatically. I think of emptiness, I think of appearances. Right, the 2 are two sides of the same coin. This is how the world works. And 5, act in a way that creates the seeds of what I want to experience in the future. Or we could just say act morally, right? We all want to live in a world where everyone is taking care of everyone else. We don't want to live in a world with hunger and with people stealing from each other and war, poverty. None of that. We don't want it for ourselves. We don't want it for others. So it seems simple, right? Just remember, blank screen, projections. They're forced on me by how I acted. And these two are tied together. Act morally. So keeping in mind, one of the tools in our tool belt is to keep in mind that whenever a negative thought or a negative emotion arises, comes up, we are not acting with wisdom. It's opposed to wisdom. The more we can recognize that those two are mutually exclusive, the quicker we can make the connection between make the connection closer between appearances and emptiness. Does that make sense? That opposition, that impossible way of existing, negative emotions and wisdom, realizing they are opposites. They can't be going on at the same time. Impossible. That supports this idea that the infallibility of karma, that appearances never fail, and emptiness beyond any position are connected. Two sides of the same coin. So we can use that as a tool. We can use our negative emotions as a tool. Instead of getting even more like pissed off and angry that, gosh darn it, I'm angry again. So instead of saying, oh, I'm such a bad practitioner, we can go, oh, can't be angry and have wisdom at the same time. Okay. I'm going over to the 5 steps of the blank screen, projection, forced on me by my karma, wisdom, acting ethically. We can use it. And not just be better because someone told us to be better, right? Not just be a good girl or a good boy. Oh, she's so nice. She's so good. No, because that's how we create a world that is pleasant for everyone. That's the only way we can. No other way. So now if we tie, so we've tied appearances, karma, with emptiness. We've shown how negative emotions and wisdom are mutually exclusive, can't be having one and the other at the same time, can't be having both at the same time. Let's talk about wisdom and bodhicitta. Wisdom and the wish to become totally, completely, fully enlightened for the benefit of all living beings, leaving none out, right? Every single other living being. Countless other living beings. There's this practice called the 4 immeasurables. Semepachi. And it's where there's 4 wishes that you make. It's very lovely. 4 wishes that you make. But the people you're wishing it for, they call it the 4 immeasurables because you're wishing that all living beings, the first one is have happiness and the causes for happiness. May all living beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. So there's 4 thoughts like that. And you're wishing them for all living beings, which is, as we've talked about before, an unthinkable number of other people. It's very big. It's huge. It's why great compassion is called great compassion. There's regular compassion that you have for someone. I hope you you get over your cold quickly. You have compassion for someone. Great compassion. May may everyone who exists never have a cold ever again. So the difference between the one and the all, it's huge. uh, because of the principles of karma, which is part of our wisdom, understanding how karma works is part of wisdom, right? Karma and emptiness, two sides of the same coin. Wisdom is understanding that, right? So because of the laws of karma, your actions you do with this idea of becoming fully enlightened, so you can benefit every one of the countless number of living beings, that makes that karma so powerful, because whatever it is you're doing is for their benefit, is to get you to that place where you truly can benefit them, to get you to that state of being where you truly can benefit every other living being. So any act you do with this idea of that wish in your heart, with the wisdom that understands why that works. That's the key to the whole thing. Those two together. What was the word? Oh, I didn't copy it. It's like the essence of the Buddhist teachings. And then Geshe Kappa is reminding us that it's impossible to have this wish to benefit others if we don't totally understand ourselves, the situation we're in, that everything is suffering, that we're forced to take on over and over these impure body and mind. So there we have renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view. Such a perfect teaching by Geshe Kappa. So we have a few minutes if anyone has any questions. Oh, good. I guess I don't have to teach ACI 3 in April. Okay, I guess I do. Oh, good. Sometimes I'm confused. Ultimate bodhicitta, which I think is emptiness directly with the direct perception of bodhicitta. Okay, so there's this, and it obviously didn't come in this course, but I believe it's in the courses on the Bodhisattva's way of life. Perhaps it's course 12. But there's this idea of deceptive bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. And just generally, deceptive bodhicitta is where you're thinking about all the countless living beings. For you who are not yet enlightened, if you're not yet enlightened, I'll let me put it this way. For those of us still in the circle of pain, all these living beings, they're deceptive, right? They look to us to be real suffering beings. And when we think of them, and we think of them suffering, we cry. We love these beings, but it's tainted. It's deceptive bodhicitta because we hold on to them as being real. Maybe not tightly, because we've done course 1. We understand the 3 principal paths. So we're starting to loosen our grasp onto others as being real from their own side. But it's talking about that level of bodhicitta, that level of the wish. And then the ultimate bodhicitta, they say, is the direct perception of emptiness. So there's, again, we've got something that, wait, they appear to be unconnected. We've got countless living beings who are suffering, and I need to become enlightened to help them. And we've got emptiness, the absence of self-existence. They appear unrelated, but they are related, right? Countless suffering living beings are an appearance. And just remember, it's not that appearances are by definition bad things. Appearances are all we have to work with. Appearances are all we ever have to work with. Appearances could be of harmful people. Appearances could be of angels. So anyway, while others are appearing to us to be suffering, while others are appearing to us to be harmful, that's all we can work with. Great. Thank you very much. I will this person's harming me. I'm going to go through the 5. Blank screen, projection, forced on me by my past actions, Wisdom, the two are tied together. Act morally. All we have to work with. So, great. So I know we're at the last moment. I just wanted to mention that there's a dependent relationship between each of us and receiving the teachings. And so think about how it is you can support ACI, how you can support these amazing, really wondrous, marvelous live translators who just, oh, thank you so much for what you do. So if you can find a way to support these teachings, so that everyone can get teachings. Okay. So thank you so much. And I hope we get the opportunity to meet each other in person someday. You are in my hearts, even though I may not even know you. I may not be able to pronounce your name. You're in my heart, and I thank you for your practice.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for
Thank
teaching.
you.
谢
Thank
谢老师 ，Thank you so much。
you.
Thank you so much, teacher.
Thank you.
ACIG and more ACI classes. Thank you.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank
Thank
you so
you,
much, teacher. Please stay so long
teacher.
in my heart.
Okay. Have a great day. See you next time.